Good morning, you dark shapes.
Not the light on.
No, it's okay. I know what you look like, some of you. You know, some of you know that I've been blessed with clairvoyance, and maybe some of you don't. But I just wanted to, as we are in the third week of grief over losing our beloved Maggie, I wanted to add this to it. That when Sandy called me and told me that Maggie had passed, I had a vision of Maggie, and it was so sweet that I wanted to share it with you. But I saw her, I came up behind her, and she was standing on a dance floor, on the edge of a dance floor, and she was swishing this beautiful skirt made of, I thought it was, you know, astral colors are so much more intense and beautiful than what we have here. But it was a gypsy skirt, and something that we would have seen Maggie wear had she had the opportunity. And it was bands of red and gold and turquoise and all of the beautiful rainbow shades. And she was swishing it to the tune of the music that I couldn't hear, but I could sort of see people dancing off in the distance. And I was coming up from behind her, and she looked like she did about a year ago. And I realized that when my father passed, I saw him look about 35 years old, but I knew what he looked like because I have pictures of him that young. But I would not have recognized Maggie if I'd have seen her at 35, because I had never seen a picture of her. But she turned around and she looked over her left shoulder, and she beamed these beautiful white, pearly, perfect teeth at me. And she said, "Jenny, I can dance again." And I have not shed a tear for her, because I can't. She is in so much joy, so much. She's getting to do what she loves to do, and that's dance. And in these beautiful clothes that she's obviously shopping for over there on the other side. So she's having a good time, and I'm like, I can't wait to see you again when it's my turn. And what I wanted to share with you was a passage that I came, because many of us have had people transition out of our lives, whether it's been now, a long time ago, or it's even when it becomes our turn. And it's from the book that Yogananda wrote called Where There Is Light. And I thought that it fit so beautifully here in tribute to Maggie and to Bill, who just had recently passed, and all those that I don't remember, I should say, you know their names. The astral world is infinitely beautiful, clean, pure, and orderly. And this was spoken by Sri Yukteswar, who was Yogananda's guru. And he called him the incarnation of wisdom. There are no dead planets or barren lands. Terrestrial blemishes, weeds, bacteria, insects, and snakes are absent. Unlike the variable climates and the seasons of the Earth, the astral planets maintain even temperatures of an eternal spring, with occasional luminous white snow and rain of many-colored lights. Astral planets abound in opal lakes, bright seas, and rainbow rivers. And I just thought you might enjoy hearing that. So what needs changing? You come here because thinking gives us a sense of belonging by the divine, a sense of hope that we count in the grander scheme of things. Do you sweep your kitchen floor? Do you clean out your cupboards? Of course you do. But do you take the opportunity to sweep out those cobwebs in your soul, those cupboards that you keep, the places, the things that you've done that maybe you're not so proud of? Do you take those out and clean those out? You know, it occurred to me that shadow, well, I talk a lot about shadow side because I believe in the profoundness of doing that work, of healing those places in us that keep us separate from each other and God. And it occurred to me that a shadow is an image, I looked it up, is where we block the rays of light, and then it casts a darkness onto the soil or wherever the lights would have hit had we allowed it, or if we weren't standing there. And then the other thing that occurred to me was that Peter Pan lost his shadow, do you remember? Mm-hmm. And how important it was for him to get it back, so much so that Wendy had to sew it back on. So what if that's it? What if that is those places that we are ashamed of, and those places where we've hated, where we've had what I call toxic misunderstanding, where we've shown the darker side of our humanness? What if it's just a matter of we have managed to keep God from shining His light in there to help us see the truth of what that lesson was? What needs to change is to seek within yourself God's light. We atone for our quote-unquote sins or mistakes, meaning we're able to take an honest look at the thoughts and actions that aren't so fun to look at. We atone rather than ask forgiveness because God's never judged us and never will. To atone means to allow allow us to get back on track where we've stepped off. And that's it. I mean, God's love is so very vast, and we are so very pure and clean and orderly in God's light that we are the ones who are standing in the light, casting the shadow. It has nothing to do with the world or anything else, except that we, with our thinking, our limited thinking, creates the problems that are standing in our way. And that's what religious science teaches us: how to clean that up, heal it, move past it, and create what it is that we're looking for in our life, which for the most part is peace and happiness. Everything else comes with, don't you think? The other night I watched a movie that's trending on Netflix called The Railway Man. I don't know if any of you've seen it. It's a story about a young British officer who spends time in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. And I knew a man back in the 70s. He was a sailor, owned a boat down in Key West when I was living on my dad's boat down there at the tender age of 21. And I had a great time, guys. I really, really did. But he had told us that the Japanese forced them to work regardless of how sick they were. They didn't excuse you if you were ill. And Wendy at the time had dysentery and was very, very, very sick. His friend, who he was encamped with, decided to save Wendy's life and took a rock and hit his foot so hard it took his toe off. And that saved his life. His friend died because if he couldn't walk, they took him to the hospital. If he was too sick to work, they made you work. So I already had this curiosity from the previous experience of listening to another prisoner of war story. And this story, what was so interesting about the movies that we have today is that now, instead of like back in the John Wayne days where the bad guy was the bad guy and the good guy was the good guy, today they show you the evolution of both sides of the coin. So you see the bad guy evolving into good, you see the bad side of the good guy. And in this particular story, it was the healing of both of these men. The Japanese translator who could not get over and heal himself from what he had witnessed happening to this young British officer. And the British officer tracked him down and went to inflict his vengeance, the things that had happened to him, on this Japanese man. And the Japanese man was willing to take the punishment because that's to the degree of his suffering. And they were both able to heal because they saw the suffering in each other. And it was a beautiful film. It was very hard to watch in some places, but it was very beautiful. And I think that sometimes I am pulled to watch those films because what I got out of it was seeing the torture and the torture in myself. So what needs changing? In religious science, one of our iconic phrases is change your thinking, change your life. We come to religious science because it feels better thinking positively, doesn't it? We know that living in fear causes havoc, it destroys our health, and sometimes it's not worth living our lives with all of that. This place gives us a friendly God, not somebody who's up there in the sky pointing down at you going, "You're in for it, kid." There was an old joke that my father used to tell about when he was becoming a diving instructor. And everything went wrong that day, everything. And he was just so demoralized. It was up to him to get out to 30 feet of water so that he could take his diving instructor's test. And everything went wrong. I mean, the weight belt fell off. He couldn't clear his mask. You know, it was, so he said he started paddling backwards and he's trying to clear his mask and get that. And he just looks up in the sky and he says, God, why me? And he said this cloud formed over his head. This golden arm came down with this long finger and pointed to him. He says, because you make me mad. That's the more gentle version of it. So don't we all have days like that? What did I do, God? I swear. So let me catch up here. So this religious belief system that Ernest Holmes did not want a church made out of, I read this wonderful little book where in 1950 there were delegates sent to Los Angeles after Ernest had retired to decide whether religious science was to become a church. And there were perks, there were good things that could happen if they turned it into a church, and therefore we became a church at that time. But it helps us, gives us tools to help us figure out where we are in the maze and how to move out of it in a positive way. And we have so much support. This study group, this quote-unquote church that we call the Positive Living Center, has been such a beautiful nest for me personally to heal and to feel safe, to go to almost, and all of you who would support me in my healing and my religious, not my religious, but my spiritual journey. And it means everything to me. And I'm so grateful that you're all here with me. But back to my thoughts. Isn't it curious that when we are ever up against something that is a beautiful sight, a wonderful smell, you hear a lovely music in the air, don't you fully embrace it? Don't you open your arms to, you stand in it to feel like you're on the beach and you feel a warm breeze. You cup your ear to hear the music a little better. You stand on tiptoe to see into whatever this beautiful sight is that you're straining to see. And doesn't it remind you of don't you remind yourself of a rooster who's standing on a fence post, letting the world know how great it is that there's a new morning that's just come. And when there's a bad smell, an ugly sight, a terrible sound, don't you shrink from it? We shrink from it, we put our fingers in our ears, we cover our eyes, we put our sleeve over our face, and we run from it. That's the difference between religious science and what it offers. It is so wonderful to come in here and hear positivity that we open ourselves up to say, more, more, I want more. It tastes good, it sounds great, it smells wonderful. This is what religious science offers us. What we need to change is our love for us, your love for you. This morning I was looking at my cat, it was so cute because it's kind of like everybody takes their turn, you know. All of my cats sit down at the bottom of the floor and wait for so-and-so to move out so they can jump up in my lap. And I love it. I'm so grateful to them for loving me that much. And I thought, you are God in form. And when I went into the bathroom and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, instead of seeing all of the character flaws and how old I'm getting and all the other negative stuff that my ego would like to bombard me with this morning, I thought, that's God looking back out at you. I am a form of God, and you are too. The healing, the changes that we need to do is within ourselves. The changes that we need to make within ourselves, if you do, you see your pets better, you see your lives better, you see your neighbors in a different light, you see everything differently. You don't worry so much about what's going to happen down the road because this moment is perfect. There is nothing else that can be added to you to make you better, right here and right now. You let your ego have it, of course. It's going to scare you half to death with the what ifs.